I want to welcome everyone to this interview. You're going to love it. I'm speaking today with Bradley Charbonneau, who's a best-selling author and has written 22 books. As remarkable as that may sound, his journey is ordinary, and it's why this interview is relevant for you. If you aspire to write one or more books yourself, then you'll be fascinated by what he has to say, and you'll be challenged to do what he has done. Bradley's life changed drastically on November 1st, 2012, when he accepted a challenge to write every day for a month. There were no rules or descriptions of what exactly he was supposed to write, how long, or anything. He just started writing something, anything. After 15 days, things got easier. The words started to flow, and bigger ideas formed. After 30 days, it was going so well that he decided to keep going. After 100 days, he had a rhythm. And 550 days in, he published his first book. And on day 2753, he published his 22nd book. Every single day, he only needed to do one tiny, simple thing: create. Welcome, Bradley. What an amazing story. And it's all the more so because you once described yourself as a travel writer who neither traveled nor wrote. What has happened between the travel book you published in 2004 and the writing challenge? What made you decide that after 8 years of not writing much, that you should suddenly write every day for a month?
Wow. Looking back at that, I thank you very much for having me. By the way, Bruce, this is great to be here, and this is really fun. We were just talking before we hit record, and we have so much to talk about, and I'm really looking forward to this interview. But so what happened between 2004 and 2012 is pain and agony and regret and sadness and depression and lack of action. And I could keep going with the negative with the negative terms. It used to really even bug me to even repeat them, but now I'm sort of beyond it, I've passed it. But it was a sad time when I wasn't writing. I wasn't living the dream I wanted to live, and I was cheating myself. I was lying to myself and saying that my life was fine when it wasn't. Because I wasn't the person I thought I was going to be, and it hurt. And it finally took in 2012. It sounds so simple, and it is it took an external force. It took someone else, this guy, John Muldoon, who I had known the guy. Here's how bad it was. I had known the guy for 4 or 5 years, and we had worked. I had a marketing agency back then in San Francisco, and we worked together on a regular basis. And he didn't even know about me that I had a dream to become a writer. And that's how much I bottled it up. That's how much I was hiding in the closet. Because the thing about dreams is that if you don't tell anybody, then you can't fail. If you don't get started, you can't fail. So in a way, it stays safe with you, but at the same time, that dream is festering like cancer inside of you, and will either kill you or make you miserable. So I wasn't dead yet, but I was miserable. And so finally, when he heard this, he had a program back then called Monthly Experiments, where he would do 30 days of no coffee, or 30 days of wake up at 5 a.m. or something like that, right? And he says, oh man, we're going to do one for you. We're going to do write every day, because it's either going to kill you or it's going to, get you over this hump. Because he just felt so bad for me. He felt so sad that I wasn't doing what I wanted to be doing. And he said, let's just do this 30 days. It works for coffee. It might work for you.
Wow.
And I was really scared. I thought, this is terrifying, because wait a minute, I kind of like this dream if it's not real. It sounds great to talk about it and dream about it and wish upon a star, but if I actually take action, then there's a chance I fail. That was super scary. But with the external factor, with him being there as my accountability in reality,
Mhm.
that is what broke the camel's back and finally got me started.
Yeah, what you say about the risk of failure if you do it, there's these two aspects of doing an online business. It's true of anything, but we feel it especially because of the isolation that we have um, uh, as solo entrepreneurs. And that is that as long as you're in the planning phase, in a way you can't fail because it's preparation. You're always
Yeah.
preparing. You just have one more thing to do. We do that, we'll get ready to go. And then just as you get that done, you think, oh, I can think of something else I probably need to do before I do that. And as long
Yeah.
as you're in that preparation phase, as long as you're getting ready, you're not failing because you're succeeding at getting ready. But once you stop and you say, you know what, I've done all the preparation that I should be doing. I really need to get on with it. And now you have to switch gears in your mind and think, you know what, I got to put this into practice. Then you start feeling really afraid because you think, all this stuff I've been talking about, it had better work.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was so scary. It was probably the scariest thing I've ever done. And nobody even knew it. Nobody knew I was going through all this turmoil.
Yeah.
But it's, can even make it worse if you're really just alone in this
Yeah.
and you haven't dared tell people of what your secret passion is, your secret dream. I mean, in a
How did,
way, if you're on your own, but
how did you manage to let slip to this guy that you actually were a closet writer?
that's funny because he's asked me about that later on, and I remember it. I remember it so clearly. And I don't know how it slipped, but I can remember it's one of those times where you remember exactly the scene. We're on Larkin Street in San Francisco. We're going to this awful hole in the wall little restaurant, Cambodian restaurant, and I told him, and he stopped in his tracks and said, "What are you talking about? What is this? How do I not know this about you?
Yeah.
This is huge. And you've been hiding." I mean, he was kind of offended too. He's like, "You've been hiding this from me.
Yeah.
I've known you for years. What's up with that?" And it was tough. It was brutal.
Oops. Just pretend you didn't hear that. We'll go in to eat and we'll just have a nice time together.
Yeah, and I'll continue living my pseudo life
Yeah.
of fakery and deceit and hiding in the shadows from becoming the person I really wanted to become.
Did you um, did you feel that fear during those, say, the first couple of weeks? You mentioned that um, after 15 days, you started to notice that things got a bit easier. But in in those first 15 days, how did you feel?
It was scary. I definitely had some moments of, what if I just skipped town, and moved to Tahiti and didn't tell anybody and ran away, and then I can go hide away on a deserted island with my fake dream that I was never. At that point, I thought, wow, I'm never going to do this.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. It was scary. And
And why didn't
looking
you?
back, yeah.
Why didn't you? I mean, it's practically speaking, there aren't that many desert islands, and most of us wouldn't survive on them anyway. Never mind get to them. But what motivated you to keep on during those first 15 days if you had that much fear?
You know, it sounds so simple again. I mean, always, hindsight is always 2020, but I got to say it was the accountability. And and it's not even that he was, threatening me on the edge of a cliff if I didn't do it or anything. It was more that, wow, somebody else knows my secret. I dared confide in someone
Mhm.
with my thing that, and so I knew he's watching me. I knew he wants to know how it's going after 30 days. And of course he'd check up on me on a regular basis. And I said, no,
Okay.
no, no, I'm going, I'm writing.
Did you ever have to show him what you were doing?
Yeah, yeah. Well, so I'm pretty techie, and I can build websites and stuff. So, and especially at that time. And so I said, you know what, John, I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to not only write every day, I'm going to hit publish every day. I'm going to make it public, which was, I mean, even, I mean, it's so funny now. This doesn't phase me at all. But back then, I mean, not only did I just let go of my big secret, not only did I come out of the closet as this writer that I've always wanted to be, and now I'm going to, shout it out to the world. I
Mhm.
thought, what am I thinking? But I did it. I don't know. It was just that first tiny step that broke the dam and unleashed the huge river that had been blocked up for years.
But you had written something in 2004. So
Yes,
how did that come about?
that was an oddball case. I mean, if you back up even more, we moved to the United States in 1999,
Okay.
and from where I am now. I'm now in the Netherlands. We moved to the States. My then Dutch girlfriend, now Dutch wife, and we moved to San Francisco. And so here's how clueless I was. We had no job. My wife is like an illegal alien. We weren't married, and could, no green card, no work permit, nothing. We were totally clueless. And we moved to one of the most expensive cities in the country. What we're thinking there. We know no one. And I come up to the grandiose idea that I'm going to be a writer. I mean, think of like the bank giving me a loan, right?
Yeah,
So I'm sorry, could you go run your plan again to buy again?
yeah.
That's not going to work. And so I gave myself like 9 months at that very first landing in San Francisco, to do it, to write, to do it, to really be this writer. And I did it. I did it for 9 months. And I mean, this is, pre Kindle, pre Amazon, pre everything, right? So we're back in the old days of send query letters to agents and publishers and all that. And so, and it's barely, we're even emailing, right? And so it was slow going. But in that time, I published several articles with reputable magazines and newspapers and stuff. And I actually did write a book. And I was in a book, I was in an author critique group weekly.
Mhm.
And I was in there for about 2 years. And so I was doing the writer that I wanted to do. But again, back then, unless you were, so in my writers group was a guy named Khaled Hosseini. And we were working on a little book, something about a kite in Afghanistan. We're like, okay, well, we'll read that. And so we're sitting there reading his 6 pages, and his book turned into The Kite Runner. And so if you had sales like he did, then you can quit your job as a medical doctor and be a full-time author. But if you didn't, then you didn't.
Mhm.
But still, I didn't even get past, I mean, the stuff I'm good at now, actually finishing books and publishing them and really going all the way, I was too scared to do back then. So yep, I was a typical guy who had the papers in a drawer collecting dust,
Mhm.
and I didn't write again. The 2004 book was actually a travel guide, like photography and some writing, that I got like landed in my lap via a Dutch publisher. I don't even remember how it happened, but it's probably just via kind of thing. And so, sure, that was a book, but it wasn't really my genre or what I was doing. But still, it was a book. I did it.
Yeah.
But then I stopped for
But
eight
then you
years.
stopped. And
Yeah.
why did you stop? Because you just didn't know what to do next, or
Yes, I didn't know what to do next, and purely, I mean, financial and reality as well. I couldn't even, and back then you really did have to hit it big to be able to
yeah.
actually make any money. So I was giving it the best I knew how, which wasn't much at the time either. And given the options, there weren't so many options back there. It was really, sign with a New York agent and get published by one of the,
Yep.
the big publishing houses. So, and I didn't even get to the point of really querying too much. So we were just starting a family and kids, and San Francisco costs. And well, here I can tell you what happened. My friend over there, Khaled Hosseini with the Kite Runner, he asked me after one of the meetings. He said, "Hey, so um, do you think I should have like a business card and a website for my author, potential author career?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, I think so." And I did know marketing. And I said, yeah. And he says, oh, wait, could you help me with that? I saw you helped somebody else out with that. And I said, sure, I could do that. So I built, the Kite Runner and Khaled's
Mm.
first website. And I like to joke that his, 22 million plus sales are all attributed to, of course, to his original website.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with his literary abilities. So that, he's a great guy.
Yeah.
So that actually turned into what I did for the next 8 years. I had a marketing agency, and a lot of it was focused on authors, which in a way was even more painful because now I'm helping authors, whereas in my secret dreams, that's who I wanted to be. So
Mhm.
I don't know what kind of masochistic plan that was, but it was like paying the bills. It's paying the bills, really.
Well, that's really interesting. Now, we've talked a little bit about the hiatus that occurred between that first book and then this incredible string of books that you've cranked out since then. And so the first one is called The Secret of Kite Hill, and I'm just wondering if that's a coincidence, or the fact that you had a friend who wrote one called The Kite Runner. Um, I don't know. Is there a connection there?
Nope, no,
No.
just pure coincidence. I did joke with him though that he was eating into my sales, but minor minor envious joke there.
Kind of like the guy that told a reporter one time that he and Michael Jordan had won this game, and it turned out that this guy had scored 1 point.
Yep, that sounds exactly right. Something like that.
The title of the book, The Secret of Kite Hill, is the kind of a title that you'd expect to have on a children's novel. But when you read the introduction, it's clear that there's a lot more going on than that.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could elaborate on that a bit.
So what happened there was, and again, there's these moments in life where you look back and they're just so clear. And this is another one of those. And it was, we're sitting on the red chair in the living room in San Francisco, and we're reading like a boring children's book. And my son says to me, we could do better than that. And it was March 3rd. And I don't know what got into my head, but I calculated that the 10-year anniversary of my 2004 book was April 1st, 2004. The 10-year anniversary was coming up in 3.5 weeks. And when my son said we could do better than that, somehow it triggered that we need to. I'm not a children's book author by any means, and I thought, though, I don't care. Let's do better than that. Let's write a short, quick, dorky, funny children's book, and let's have the publish date be April 1st, 2014, 10 years to the day of that first book. And that's what got into my head. And so what we did, and they said, okay, sure, that sounds fun, Dad, whatever. Then what are we going to write about? I said, I don't know. And let's just take like a daily occurrence and see what happens. And so back then we walked to school and we walk home from school, and we would walk home through the Kite Hill Park.
Okay.
And on Kite Hill Park. So at night, I would talk with my sons and they're in bed, and it was sort of like reverse reading a nighttime story. I would ask them, okay, so we're walking home from school. Then what happens? And I would try to be quiet and listen to their story, and they would just make up a story. Oh, okay. So the dog, when it fell into a cave and we had to go get it. Oh, yeah, yeah. Then what happens? Oh, well, then we couldn't get it. So, one of the boys has to go follow it. Oh, okay. Okay, that's cool. All right. Then what happened? And day by day, they told me the plot of the story that they're making up as they're going along, right?
Mm.
And then one night, one of my sons said, well, then what happened, Dad? And I said, I don't know. It's your story. You're creating it. And you could just like see the light bulb going off above his head. I just got the chills just now thinking of that moment again. And he realized for the first time, he's like, wow, I'm a creator. I'm creating this story from nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling it to my dad. He's writing it down. and then he reads it to us at night. But then the next scene is whatever's in my own imagination. And so it's my story. And so we did that for 3 weeks. And this is beginning of a Kindle and all that stuff, but I figured it all out and I published it, and we had a published date of April 1st, 2014.
On one of your websites, there's a clip. We'll talk about this in a little bit of a girl, an 8-year-old girl opening a cardboard box. And I have to tell you that when I saw that, it practically brought me to tears. I just felt like a little kid all over again. It was just so exciting. In fact, I posted that the URL for that page on my Facebook wall soon thereafter, simply as a suggestion that if people didn't know what to do with their kids, that they ought to go see this website. It is so exciting. And so maybe right now is a good time for you to talk about this project that has come out of all this, where you're now writing books with kids.
Yeah, sure. So after that first book, and that first book was just a fluke. It was just fun. It was a joke. It was a silly idea. And we did it, and that was fun, and that was great. And that was, I didn't have any big plans for the future or anything. It was just, hey, that would be fun. And for me, secretly festering inside of me was, hey, we just published a book. It wasn't that hard, right? And is the book going to win literary awards? Nope. Is it going to earn $1 million in royalties? No way. Do I care? No, because that wasn't the goal. The goal was to finish a project together with the kids and to build their confidence, to show them that their imagination can explode and turn into something real that exists. So the story you have in your head can become a book that somebody can hold in their hands, and you could then trigger the imagination of another kid in the world. And that was all I needed. So fast forward, we wrote another 3 books together. We even together with another family, another 2 boys. That's the Markree Castle series. And that was fun. We'd get on Zoom calls and we would just talk. It's kind of the same thing. We talk about the plot, like what happens next. And I got to say, that was a little tougher with 4 boys trying to wrangle in one story. But I would just get tidbits, and then I would take off and go write something and come back to them and get the next part. But it's kind of an odd thing for an author to say, but the book wasn't even really the goal. The goal was the process. The goal was building confidence in these kids, and to start a project and to finish it, and to have this thing in your hand that was what I consider a time capsule. Because if you look back at that 2012 book, 2014 book with the kids, I mean, my boys were 8 and 10. I mean, they're talking about aliens and dragons and silly boy stuff. Whereas now they're 14 and 16. I mean, they wouldn't go near that world, right? That's, oh, silly kid stuff. And so it was a time capsule of that moment in their lives, which of course they don't care about now, not yet. But as a parent, wow. I mean, this is going to beat out any photo album, any weekend to Disneyland. We have this thing, this creation that we did together with the kids. And we did it together, and it's finished, and here it is. And it's from that year when they were those ages, and we can never replicate that. We can't pretend to be 8 and 10 again. It's not going to work. So that idea, and of course, during that time when I was writing with the kids, I talked to people and they would say, I'll never forget this one guy at a party. Again, there's clear scenes. I know exactly where we are. And this guy approaches me and says, it's like, wow, what are you doing with your boys? That sounds just amazing. He says, if you ever have a weekend workshop or something like that to do this, I will do it. I will sign up. Just tell me when. Tell me when and where. I will be there. And I thought, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So but I still did nothing with it. And finally, so to jump quite a bit ahead, just to finish off this story, 3 years ago, 2016, we moved to the Netherlands. And part of it was because my wife is Dutch. I want to be near her family. Also, I want to give my kids a different experience living abroad, living in a different country. They both speak Dutch. We all speak Dutch. But for me, it was the final straw to close down that company I had in the States and to truly go all in and become an author.
Mhm.
So even though I started writing in 2012, I went all in 2016. I closed that company. We moved out of California. We moved out of the States completely, moved to Holland, and now I'm an author. And so also I thought, hey, let's bring to life some projects, some ideas that we've had along the way. And one of them, it just wouldn't go away, is this idea of writing a book together with your kids in a month.
Mhm.
And I like that it's compact, it's finishable, and it's short. And once you get over the idea of analysis paralysis and perfectionism, and you just say, I'm just writing a silly little book. I'm not looking for literary awards. I'm not looking to make $1 zillion. It's just for the process and for building my kids' personality, improving our relationship. And if that's the goal, then we're succeeding like crazy. And so now I have a program. It's a month long, and we gather up parents and kids, and I lead them through a month process of writing a short book together with your kids. And like you saw that video, that's one of the students. She's 8 years old, and she finished her book, and they ordered the paperback versions, and it came in the mail. And you see the video. I'm sure you'll put the link up here, but you see the girl opening up this box, and it is just Christmas revisited. And except even better than at a gift, the gift is her own imagination is in that box, and it's her imagination turned into reality. That, I can't imagine a better gift for a kid, for building their confidence, showing them that their voice has been heard and we are listening.
Yeah, it's a tremendous feeling to get that kind of a boost as a kid, because there's
Yeah,
so many insecurities and so much going on, and you don't know. You know, one minute you've got a best friend, and the next minute, you know, the person doesn't want to speak to you again, and I just
yeah,
everything. The dynamics of growing up, you know, um, is just painful, and to
yeah,
have an experience like that 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 gives you not just self confidence but self belief is
yeah,
just astounding to be able to
yeah.
do that. I think it's wonderful.
You know what you just said about the friend, like, oh, here's my best friend, and the next week it's my greatest enemy. So what I see is that we are giving kids this internal power, this internal sense of meaning and purpose, in that I have this thing that I did that no one can take it away from me.
Mhm.
They can call it silly or something, but I don't care. I did this thing, and this is mine. No one can ever take it away from me.
And that's just as true for anybody who writes a book. I mean, it's
You're right.
it, you know, we're talking about you know, young kids here, and about the confidence that it gives them in the self belief and the power that it gives kids to do this. But Bradley's written 22 books. I've written a grand total of one that's a hardback, but you know, probably getting close to 1 million words online about things.
Wow.
And um, when you do that and you start cranking this stuff out consistently, um, it enables you to do much more than if you didn't do it. And so if you're struggling to think about, well, you know, it, you know, pipe dream, I'd like to write a book someday, but you know, you can't imagine what it'll do for you when you come out the other side. One of the things I do sometimes, I mean, Bradley, I'm sure you've heard this, you know, countless people will say to you over a period of time, oh, I've always wanted to write a book. You
Yeah.
know, they'll say this.
Yeah.
And you know what I say to them? I say to them, I'll tell you what, I've written a book and I understand what's required to do it. And if you really want to write a book, I'll teach you for free the process, but you're going to do all the writing. Not one single person has come back to me to say, okay, I'll take you up on your offer. Not a single one.
It does not surprise me in the least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had the same exact conversation and the same results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for anyone who's listening to this interview, this is something you can do, and there's a lot of help available. And you can talk to me, you can talk to Bradley, but there's lots and lots of help available. And it's something you need to do for yourself, not just for your customers. But we'll get into some of that a little bit later on.
But just to one note to continue on that, because I've now had several parents in the groups, right? So they're writing the book with the kids. And then I remember I had one mom on the phone one night. I'm in a train station and she's talking to me and she's like, Bradley, this is great with the kids and all, but wow, you've opened my eyes. I could write a book. And then she says, and now I know how to do it. So it's like, thank you. It was kind of funny. She was kind of fed up with working with her kids. Like, okay, I've had enough with the kid. All right. Can I write my book now?
Yeah. One of the most common questions that authors are asked, and you probably get tired of hearing it, is where do you get your ideas? In this case, I'm going to ask you that anyway. And it's because all that we've talked about so far has got such a large entrepreneurial component to it. So you talked a little bit about what gave you the idea to write books with kids, that it was your sons that encouraged you to do this. But why would anybody take on a project this size and then say, oh, by the way, we're going to do this in a month? I mean, what do they say? Never work with children and animals. So now we're going to have you work with children, and they're your own kids who probably don't really want to listen to you anyway. And we're going to put a month deadline on this. What possessed you to do that?
Well, frankly, the month is easier than a year. Okay. If I said this is a year-long program, it would be too brutal and too painful, and everybody would drop out by month 3, if not week 3. And so I want to have it be an overviewable. It's where we can see the beginning and the end. And what I like about a month is that it's just such a clear element of a calendar. It's now April. April's going to start on this date and it's going to end on that date. It's very clear. It's not, okay, this is a 90-day program. It begins on, I don't know, the middle of this month. And then what's that? June, July, I don't know. So the fact that it's constrained, I have a chapter in one of my books called Constraint Breeds Creativity. When you only know you have this amount of time, then you're going to get it done. And all the, the time fills to the allotted.
Expands to fill the project expands to fill the time available.
Yes, thank you. That's the one. And so if we give you a year, you're going to do it in a year. If we do it in a weekend, you can do it in a weekend. And when I say book, especially with the kids' book, I should just be clear. The Secret of Kite Hill, I think it's 38 pages, right? It is a long essay. It is not some Dune 600-page docu-saga. And that's fine. Because again, we're not going for standards. We're not going for the literary expertise. We're going for, let's get this thing done. And that's why, I mean, if you look at The Secret of Kite Hill, it's literally about walking home from, we didn't even get home. It's the dog gets lost in the tunnel and we go after it and we're looking for him. That's it. That's the whole story.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. And so, well, speaking of spoiler alert, I get comments on that book. And my favorite Amazon review is, so it's the mom, and the mom writes and says, yeah, so my son has me typing this. Yeah, I thought the book was great. I like the self-deprecating dad humor, but my son says his favorite is chapter 8, when Lou reads his own chapter and he's allowed to write whatever he wants. That's his favorite. And the chapter is just full of the stupidest stuff. Wow. And the kids love it, of course, because an 8-year-old wrote it and an 8-year-old is reading it. And that's where they connect, and that's where they see the humor.
Yeah. And for you, it's a time capsule from your kids. But for another kid that reads it, he's reading or she's reading language that they use thoughts that they have, um, things that are important to them, written in a way that is the way they think and the way they talk.
Yeah.
And that makes a
Yeah.
connection that even people that do children's writing have to somehow get themselves into that mental mode so that they can write at that level and communicate with it. But to
Yeah.
me, there's no substitute for having somebody already at that level who's producing that material.
Speaking of which, so there's a 17-year-old girl who wrote one of the books. It's called Drama, and it's all about the drama at her high school. And I was in Switzerland, and this girl's from the States. I was in Switzerland visiting a friend of mine, and she has a daughter who's 17. And I said, hey, look, here's a 17-year-old girl who wrote a book. Here, this is it. Here's the description of the book. And see, isn't this funny? And the girl, in tears, turns to her mom and says, Mom, how did this girl write a book just for me?
Wow.
And I thought, wow, if you just can reach one person on the planet, that's
Yeah.
success. That's what I'm after. That's really all I'm after.
Yeah.
Getting your message out and having it heard, even if just by one person.
Mm-hmm. And then there's this big change. And that is that you suddenly, after doing all this great stuff with kids, decide, you know what, I'm going to write a book for adults. And then you crank out this thing 3 years after The Secret of Kite Hill called Every Single Day, Daily Habits to Create Unstoppable Success, Achieve Goals Faster, and Unleash Your Extraordinary Potential. Wow, what a title. Where did you get an idea for that? And, you know, what was the process that you used to write it?
So this one it's very autobiographical, and it's really what I'm trying to get at with this book is how a single daily habit can change your life on a massive scale.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, the main story in there being my own of starting to write on November 1st, 2012, and having that tiny little action every single day. And I was very strict. I did not miss a day. In fact, I haven't missed a day even today. I'm still going, and I still track what I write or create every day. So those 30 little days started off this, it really just opened up the dam and let the river flow. And the book is about how a tiny action on a daily basis builds up just like compound interest, and then will eventually grow exponentially to the point where it's no longer, it doesn't cost you energy anymore to make that effort. It provides you energy. And that is there's sort of again, if you see the graph, like it's exploding like this, and at some point it hits a point of no return where it comes automatically, it comes easily, and it's to the point where you can't live without it anymore. You can't not do it. You want to do it. You need it. It's almost an addiction, but in a good way. And you're addicted to a good thing that's positive for you.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and the only trick, I would get so many comments about, can't I do it on odd numbered days? How about, and the joke was, can I do it every other Thursday? So for me, the fewer decisions you have to make on a daily basis, the more room you have in your brain to make better decisions or other decisions. So if you have to decide on a daily basis, should I write today? Should I practice piano today? Should I get better at XYZ, whatever I'm trying to get better at? Should I do that today? And if you have already consciously and subconsciously made the decision that you are going to take that action on a daily basis, that is one big, dreadful mountain of a decision that you've already done. And that mindset shift of, I'm going to do this no matter what on a daily basis, that little shift is basically all you need. And again, I talk a lot about simple and easy, and I try to make it super simple every single day, right? Is it easy? Not in the beginning. I'm not going to whitewash it. In the beginning, it can be super tough, just like anything. But take fitness as the easiest analogy. I think I want to run a marathon. Well, you're not going to go run 26 miles tomorrow,
Right.
but you'll go run around the block, or you'll run a mile in a week. Great. And in a week after running around the block every day, guess what? It gets easier. Guess what? You get better at it. It becomes more enjoyable. It becomes natural. You get better. You decide, you know what? I should get better shoes. Great. Get better shoes. And it all just builds on itself. And then at some point you would ask, where do the ideas come from? And for me, this is where they come from. Because when you're cranking it out on a daily basis, what happens, the beauty of it is the unexpected happens. Even if you plan, I'm going to write 30 days and I'm going to write about, I don't know, broccoli. I'm going to write about broccoli that would be a challenge. I'm going to write 30 days in a row about broccoli. I can almost guarantee you are going to veer off on some wacky tangent at some point about something may or may not be related to broccoli, but this is going to be an idea that you have dislodged in, again, this log jam of your mind and your brain, and let it out and let it loose. And that's the good stuff. But the trick is, like, the bad news is that day might come on day 24, and you can't fake it for 24 days. You can't not do it and just wait for that good day to come, where that broccoli is dislodged from the river. I'm mixing up all of my metaphors here.
But okay. All good writers do.
Okay. But you have to put in that brutal work in the beginning to get that river flowing, to get that stuff rolling. And then there's room in your brain again for the good stuff to come out. That's where the ideas come from.
Do you ever use a writer's prompt to stimulate your mind?
I used to. I don't need them anymore. I just have them raining down on me on a daily basis.
Okay.
But yeah, those are great helps to get started if you don't have the idea. But usually my advice is really, whether you're pen and paper or keyboard, the blank screen, I know it can be scary in the beginning. It used to scare me to death, but the blank screen is eventually, it's just this invitation to get started. So just, there's jokes how you can literally type BLAH, 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 right? Blah, 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 blah. I challenge you to try to do that for more than, a couple paragraphs.
Well, it's more efficient to copy it and paste it.
Yes. You can get a lot further with that.
Yeah. There's a word in your domain which is clearly a made-up word. It's Repossible, and I'd like to hear about what that means and how you coined it, and what its significance is for you and the people you're trying to help.
So, yes, thank you very much. It is a beautiful name. I love it. It's become my brand. It's become my overarching umbrella. And right now I'm in the middle of an 11-book series, the title of which is Repossible. So the super quick backstory, we're back to the same guy in San Francisco, the same guy who got me. He has a lot to do with the beginning of it. Yes, he sure is. And I am thankful for him on a daily basis. So and again, it's so weird how I see these things so visually, but we're on Union Square. We're sitting there, we're having a Chipotle burrito, and we're talking about potential ideas for stuff we're working on. And he or I can't remember who actually coined it, but we came up with Repossible. And he looks on his phone and he says, Bradley, that domain name is available. And he says, if you don't buy it in 5 minutes, I'm going to buy it right now. I said, okay. I'll get it. And so I bought it. And for years, I didn't really know what to do with it. But I held on to it just because it's such a fantastic name. And then again, with the move to the Netherlands, so when I came here for my visa, I had to set up a company. And I'm at the, what's it called? Chamber of Commerce. And I'm in the official meeting, and I'm literally setting up my company administratively there in the meeting. And the woman says to me, okay, so what's the name of the business? And I had a business plan and I had thought it out. And I was a little concerned, I thought, because I didn't really have a business rolling at that point since I had chucked it out the window in San Francisco. So she says, what's the business? And I said, well, I thought maybe to be legitimate, I should use the business that I had in the States, because then, I don't know, that would have a little more oomph to it. And so I gave her that name, and she says, oh, sorry, that's not available in the business database here in the Netherlands. I said, oh no. She said, you got any other names? I said, type in Repossible. And so she does. She says, oh, well, that's available. And I said, that's the name of my new company. And she says, thanks. And meanwhile, I just pulled it out of a hat. But of course, it wasn't really a hat. It was a hat I'd been not wearing for 6 years by then.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the term, it's impossible and possible. And Repossible is the third fork in the road. It's the other option. Is if possible is the easy route and impossible is the difficult or impossible route, Repossible is the different perspective on how to make what used to be impossible possible. And for clarity and for ease of storytelling's sake, for me, it's I didn't used to think I would ever become a writer, and then I did, and now I am. So for me, that is a Repossible story. What used to be impossible became possible.
Okay. I'll have to look up the prefix re and see what it actually means. I find myself looking up a lot of this kind of stuff. Just to
Well, that's really relevant because re is often like repeat. It's redo it, do it again, do it again. So you could say, make it possible again, make it possible again.
okay.
Keep at it. I'm big on, clearly I've written for 2,700 something or other days in a row.
Yeah.
I'm clearly powerful in the patience and perseverance category.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go back to what we were talking about earlier when you're about the books that you write with these kids, and I want to remind people that are listening to this that this is all relevant to what you do as entrepreneurs, what you do as solopreneurs. We happen to be talking about kids, but the processes, the ideas, the things that they do, the things that you do with them are just as relevant when we're speaking about what we do in an entrepreneurial setting. The ages are different, but there's still very much the same kind of thing going on. And what I wanted to ask you about is that the books that you're writing with the kids seem to be a kind of means to an end. And it's an opportunity for kids to learn how to write books themselves. But as you say, it's not the writing of the book itself that is important. It's what it enables kids to do as a result of doing that. But one of the things that's important about any kind of writing is your audience. It's the thing that we always start with. Who are we writing this for? And I was curious to know, I think you've answered it partly already to say that when you have an 8 or a 10-year-old kid, they're essentially writing for an 8 and 10-year-old audience. But what do you have any kind of a discussion with the kids about audience?
It's usually exactly what you said. It is, think of their peers, think of their friends, think of themselves. And then, with some of the kids, we do nonfiction. And so then we get into the discussion of, what is your pain point? What is your biggest challenge? It's a typical question, right? What is your biggest challenge at the moment, and what is holding you back? And what can you do about it? So there's one boy, 10-year-old boy, and he wrote a book about his nut allergies.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has to think, okay, what are my challenges with that? What are the challenges from the 10-year-old's perspective? What are the challenges from the parent's perspective? And the mother, that was really cool. The mother wrote some chapters and the 10-year-old boy wrote some chapters. And so she would gear it a little bit towards the parents, how to deal with this severe nut allergy. And then he would write from his perspective, and also to how to help kids with a severe nut allergy deal with it. How do you tell your friends that, no, I can't have that cake, and I'd really like to, but I can't. And by the way, I can't even have that. You can't even sit next to me with that cake because I'm so severe that I can't do it. So I just want to explain it to you, what my situation is, to educate and help you, not only with me, but if there are others, so to help them. And so, yeah, it really is about audience, whether it's a fiction and just a cute or funny story, or if it's nonfiction, and then it's usually helping or educating or entertaining.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because they don't think about audience so much. They just say, I have a great story. Great, that's fine. And of course, that's absolutely fine too. If it's a little kid and a 6-year-old boy in Ireland, and he's got his stories about the sunflower patch and the mean sunflower flower. I say, great. No, it's fine. It's all good. But if you get into the, okay, by the way, there's a big difference of, do you want to write a book just for fun and this is a neat exercise? Or then there's also the big difference is, oh, you actually want to sell some of these books,
Yeah.
to strangers? Because then we get into a whole different ballgame. And
Mhm.
then audience, of course, is key.
Mhm.
And yeah, then it becomes a bigger factor.
Okay. And when you when you shift from the genre of writing kids books with kids to writing something like this other one I mentioned a minute ago, um,
Every single day.
that's the one. Yeah, I knew you'd know what it was. When you shift to that, you're thinking about a different audience. Who's your audience when you start writing those things?
They talk about a ideal customer avatar. And I love that. And it's a great exercise where you can envision your ideal reader or your ideal customer
Mhm.
and really paint a picture of that person, who it is. Because the more focused you can get on that ideal reader, the better. And it helps with everything. It helps with writing your book. It helps with marketing your book. It helps for writing the copy for a little ad for your book. Because
Mhm.
if you know exactly who it is, like for me, a lot of my books, I gear it towards, her name is Liz. She's a fictional person. Her name is Liz. She's 42 years old. She lives in the suburbs. She has 2 kids. She has a husband who works a lot, and she also kind of works part-time, but she has a secret dream to to fulfill her passion of doing XYZ, and she's not doing it. And she'd really like to do it, and she's a little bit secretly miserable about it. And she would just like someone to hold out their hand and magically whisk her into the life that she's been dreaming of, and she's not doing. And so, how does she get over that hurdle? And she has the realities of kids and life and cost and bills and
Mhm.
soccer games. And how does she do that? And so, she is my ideal customer avatar.
Does that avatar change from one book to the next?
Yes, especially if you're changing genres or changing topics, yes. But like the Repossible series, this 11-book series. From a marketing perspective, the closer I can keep it focused on Liz, the better. Because then somebody might say, "Oh well, I'm actually a suburban
Mhm.
father. Is that okay?" Of course, it's okay.
Mhm.
But it's the whole typical marketing of, if you try to please everybody, you'll please nobody. So the
Yes.
more focused you can get, the better. And then sure, it can widen out and broaden,
Mhm.
but the better you have it in your head. Because I think anything I do, how's Liz going to see that? How's Liz going to handle that? Is Liz going to like this chapter? Does this chapter apply to Liz? Yes or no, and why? Or if it doesn't, okay, well, is it still worth putting in? That really helps.
Wow. I have never really heard it put like that before. For me personally, the idea of coming up with an ideal customer has always been um, not just a struggle, but also somewhat unrealistic. Um, and I've kind of felt that what you needed to do was to create what you felt needed to be created, and then let people self-select um, to get to buy or to take on board what you had to offer. Um, I think that as you find your voice and as you get a feel for what you're doing, then it becomes clear to you who you're actually trying to reach. But
Yeah,
I've long felt that your customers define what you do. So you start out by doing what you think you ought to do or what you think you're good at. And then as people respond to what you do, you modify or tweak it a little bit because
yeah,
they're able to see better how what you do helps them, then you can see how what you do helps them.
yeah, yeah, very much. Yeah, that's super helpful. If you can get feedback like that from your readers or your audience,
Yeah,
that is such valuable feedback.
yeah. Well, I think that that kind of thing happens probably more often than many people realize, but it happens gradually and slowly over time. They're probably not aware of it. They'd have to go back and say, well, what was I doing 20 years ago? And how does that compare to what I'm doing now? And then you can see the change, but at the time you can't really see it because it just feels like a slight adjustment to what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
We talked about this a little bit earlier on, but the first one you wrote was just straightforward publishing. But and then after that, when you started this long chain of books here in the last 8 years or so, why are you sticking exclusively with Amazon? Why Amazon? Why that platform? Why not, I don't know, Barnes and Noble or somebody else? And why just electronic books?
So only some of my books are exclusively with Amazon.
Okay.
And they have a 90-day contract when you first publish a book with Amazon. And you don't have to do this, but if you choose to do the 90-day exclusive with Amazon contract, then you get access to Kindle Unlimited.
Okay.
And Kindle Unlimited is like a Netflix. People pay, I think it's $9.99 a month, and they can read as much as they like. And so then if you choose, you check a box and say, I want to be in Kindle Unlimited, then you are accessing that pool of millions of readers.
Right.
So the typical strategy is to go the first 90 days exclusive with Amazon, and then go wide and go out to the rest of the retailers and the Barnes and Nobles and the Kobos and the Apples out there after the 90 days. Unless there are certain genres that do really well in Kindle Unlimited and they don't even leave. They say, you know what? There are millions of readers in here. I'm sticking in here because it's free then, right? Well, free. You pay your $9.99. It's a subscription model. So they're paying their $9.99. They get your book for free. And if you become well known in there, they're going to want to see your book for free, and again and again. And just like with Amazon, I mean with Netflix, if Netflix had another movie that would cost me $5 one time, I probably wouldn't buy it. I'm thinking, well, I'm already paying $9.99 for Netflix. Why am I going to pay extra for that extra movie? Unless it's really, really good. So that's usually the case at 90 days with Amazon exclusive. Then I distribute wide, and then it's to everywhere and everything on the planet. From the beginning though, I do paperbacks. It's just paperbacks and audiobooks. And in fact, I'm a huge audiobook listener and narrator. I narrate my own nonfiction books, which I really enjoy. And so then I have the nonfiction book market as well. And that's actually really exciting. That market is booming. And there are so many new players in the market that really make it fun. Like there's one called Chirp Books, and it's put out by BookBub. And they have, so unlike Audible has a $14.99, again, Netflix subscription model. But for me, the downside of that is you get 1 or 2 credits per month. And what people do, and of course I would do the same thing, is that they go on quantity. And so they say, well, I've only got 1 credit. Well, that Stephen King book is 12 hours, right? But that Bradley Charbonneau book that I'd really like to read, wow, that's sort of a shorter nonfiction book. That's only 2 hours. Well, I've only got 1 credit. I could buy the 12-hour book or the 2-hour book. Well, forget it. I'm going to get the 14-hour or 12-hour book, right? So that's a disadvantage for the shorter books. However, all the non-subscription services like Chirp Books, I can go in there and I can make my book, my audio book, $3.99, or I can make it on sale for free this month or something. And I have control as well. Whereas with Audible, I do not have any control whatsoever. I can't even set the price. So there's a lot of new players out there in the market of audiobooks that are really making it exciting. I mean, not just for authors and narrators, but for listeners too. There's so many more options out there to get great audiobooks, and also for lower cost. Not to mention, I'm going to plug the libraries real quick. Libraries are a fantastic source, but you know what? It's like a secret little gem. As an author, I still make a commission if you go check out my ebook or paperback or audiobook at the library.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And so, in fact, I often get more of a commission because the libraries, I don't know how it all works with their licenses and all that stuff, but
Mm.
I can potentially make more at a library. And then the beauty of that is that the reader or listener doesn't pay a dime. They just have a checkout, they just have a loan at the library. And so one trick on that is if the library doesn't carry your book, you can ask them. And in fact, I do this all the time. It's a brutal marketing tactic. I say, "Hi, dear friend. Hey, you have a library card, don't you? Go ask for my book at the library, please." And you can do it online as well. You can just, there's a button somewhere. It says, "Oh, can't find the book you want? Request it."
I've
And
done
they
that
can
with
request it.
people on the one I wrote. The one I wrote was it wasn't intended to be an academic book, but it was picked up by an academic publisher. So there we are.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
at 300 academic libraries around the world if you want to read it. But on the people that people have asked me about it, I've said, look, don't buy it. It costs an absolute fortune. You know, the publisher
Yeah.
decides what the price is going to be. It's nothing to do with me. I wanted to sell it for whatever it was, $30 or something, and they want to sell it for 100. So look,
Wow.
save your money. But tell you what you do. You go to a library and you get it through interlibrary loan. And if you have any trouble finding it, let me know, and I know what I'm looking for. I'll help you to make the interlibrary loan system work so you can get it.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
but I had no idea that some kind of royalties were paid on books that were
Yeah.
loaned out like that. I just knew that if
Yeah.
it was interlibrary loan and it was outside the system, you had to pay to get it.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah, that's a great little secret gem there in the, and again, one of the things, I mean, we talked about sort of traditional publishing versus
Mhm.
independent publishing. And with independent publishing, I can make sure I'm in the libraries. I can, make sure it's working. I can contact a library or I can do all this stuff on my own. And whereas with a publisher, you just, you can call and beg and ask nicely. And, maybe they do it, maybe they don't. And of course, then you're going to see, 9% royalties on your
Yeah,
versus something like 70% royalty from something like Amazon.
yeah, yeah.
So it's a different world.
Um, now it's one thing to write one book, but it's quite another thing to write 22. And I've got a series of questions written down here. I had a really hard time articulating what I was trying to find out. So I'll just kind of go through some of this and we'll just sort of work our way through it. I know what I'm after, but I'm not really sure how to ask you for it. But let's start with how do you motivate yourself to write each one or to write the next one?
So I'm back to my simple principle of writing every day.
Okay.
And I am a factory. I am a factory and I'm going every day. And so because I still, 2,700 plus days into it, I still create on a daily basis. For me, it's really like brushing my teeth. Why do I brush my teeth? Well, I want my teeth to be good and be healthy and I want to have them a long time. Okay. Why do I create every day? Because it gives me energy on a daily basis. It
Mhm.
gives me new ideas. And sort of back to the idea of exponentiality, the if I just start writing on a topic, it will it will go like gangbusters and expand on itself and tangent into something else. So my challenge is not, should I write a book? My challenge is which of the 49 ideas I have going on in my
Wow.
head right this moment should I write about next? And the way I usually decipher that is a lot like I see like a brewing pot of soup and the vegetable soup. And so what's going to fall away and what's going to remain. And so after a certain amount of time, whether it's days or weeks or even months, what is that idea that keeps coming back? And for example, Spark, the program with the kids, I mean, clearly I started that in 2014. That's now 6 years ago, and I'm still doing it. So what are the ideas that keep coming back that you can't let loose and just need to be a part of your life? And those are usually the ones that need to become a book. And then there's sort of another selection process. Should this topic be a post? Should it be like a more lengthy article? Should it be like an essay? Should it be a really short book? Should it be a long book? Should it be a series of books? Should it be a course? Should it be my business? And so I just listed off 8 ideas, 8 versions or sort of gradations of the importance of that particular topic.
Mhm.
And then what's happened, like with Repossible has blossomed into the umbrella. And so now it also makes it easier to see what fits under there. Like I just had talking with a friend the other day, and we had a fantastic idea for a really cool new service. And I thought, where does that fit? Yeah, it doesn't really fit under my current Repossible brand. Great idea, but I really can't spend time on that right now.
Mm.
You know, put that away. What did you call it? Your unedited text, your
Yeah, we
unused
were
text.
talking about that earlier. Um, you decide that you've written something and you think that it's not really any good, so you throw it away. I never do that. When I write stuff, I usually think that it's all good. I edit out the stuff. That needs to be changed in a different way. But if I have some text that I think is really good, but it just doesn't fit, then I'll copy it and put it in another document that I call unused
Right,
text. Now, I may not get back to it, but if I'm looking
right,
for an idea for something, that's a reservoir of ideas that I can go and look at and say, oh, yeah, that's pretty good. Or maybe I'll see it and say, well, it actually wasn't as great as I thought it was. But I don't just
yeah,
discard, I don't make a decision like that on the spot. I save it for later and take a look
right,
at it when I'm not so close to whatever it is that I'm trying to do.
yeah, yeah. And and along the same lines, like right now I'm working on a book called Create. It's book number 5 in the series, and it's a powerful one because it's really about the action of doing, of making, of creating something. So it's a biggie in the flow of the whole process. And what often happens when I'm writing in a book, I'm intensively in that book. You just see all this stuff in your daily life that is somehow magically relevant. And you think, well, I looked at that XYZ 3 days ago and I saw it, but now I see it with different eyes because now I'm working on the book Create. Now it's relevant, or this element of that thing is relevant because my perspective is currently different because I'm working on this book. So for me, it's one book. I mean, it's like they just multiply. The one book can turn into even more books once you dig deeper because you think, "Ooh, that's a good idea." And then again, with that idea, where is it going to go? Is it going to be this small thing or a big thing, or like tossed in the garbage or tossed in the check for later bin?
Yeah. Okay. Now we're getting close to the rub of what I'm trying to get at here. A lot of entrepreneurs, not a lot maybe, but there's a percentage of them that can crank out product after product after product after product, like you write out book after book after book after book.
Yeah.
And I would say there's probably a fairly large pool of people who get one idea and act on it and then don't know what to do. And I'm trying to understand. I understand that you have developed this habit, and as a result, you have more ideas than you really know what to deal with.
Right.
But I'm trying to understand how someone gets to that point, how someone can look at a topic and see it from enough different angles to be able to come up with something that's unique. And what I'm driving at, I guess, is that I'm sure that every entrepreneur can come up with 22 different things that different topics in their niche. But these things overlap to such an extent that to talk about one for a book, for example, might encompass all of the other 21. And then you're
Yeah.
left with one book. So there has to be some kind of a thought process, something that is more than simply having a lot more ideas than you know what to do with, that goes on, that makes it so that you can say, well, I'm going to write about this thing, and that's going to be a book, but then I'm going to go to this thing, and I'm going to write a book about that. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. And what has helped me is this overarching umbrella.
Okay.
of Repossible. And so it's really, in undergrad, I was a math major, and I really see things, I often see things in line graphs. I literally like see the line graph in my head. And so the Repossible process or methodology is this waving, growing line graph
Mhm.
representing, your change in yourself and your transformation of your personality. And so when I see, for example, we're at create stage, create, I can see, okay, that's a big bump, that's a big jump, that's an important aspect of it. But then later we're gonna come down into the decide phase. And so, okay, well, that's sort of a different type of process. It's a different element of the roadmap, and that is going to have a different tone, and it's going to be even a different type of book.
Mhm.
For example, there is a book called Decide, and it's not a, I hate to say this, it's not a fun one. It's a hard one, the decision making process,
Mhm.
and it goes into decision making processes, and that, it's not as exciting as, oh, let's create and make things, but it's an aspect of that, of the bigger process. So I see it as this umbrella, with a roadmap inside of it, and where do things fit in. And one reason, this might help to explain a little bit, because Repossible could very easily be one big fat book
Right.
that, and then I wouldn't have 22 books. I'd have whatever, 11 books, right? 7 of which are kids books.
Mhm.
So however, I consciously made the decision to break it up into smaller books. And part of that is a personal reading preference. I don't like to read a 500-page book
Mhm.
unless it's some, page turning, John Grisham, I can't wait to know what happens thing.
Yeah.
But if it's a, nonfiction, self-help type how-to book, 500 pages, you're killing me. Even just looking, okay, where was that part on, practice is perfect? I can't remember. What page was that on? And so part of this is the idea of breaking it down into smaller chunks that are more flexible, and can be fluid. Not to mention, in the weird world of current self-publishing, I can go in there and change book number 4. I can change the subtitle if I want. I can go in there and change chapter 7 and delete chapter 8 and hit republish. So I can make this a more fluid process and keep things rolling, and still have a whole to it. So it seems like there's lots of parts, but it's still part of a structured diagram. I have just chosen to break it up into more bite-sized elements that I think are more consumable.
Mhm.
And from my own personal preference as well, I'd rather read an 80-page book than an 800-page book. I'm not even going to buy the 800-page book. I'm just not. I'm not going to do it. Or even audiobooks. I'm so into audiobooks. I'm not kidding about the 12-hour audiobooks. I mean, I've got to drive to like Italy to be able to finish that book.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's an hour and 20 minutes, oh, I could do that. That's like 2 walks with the dog.
Do you think that that people will feel that they're not getting value from a book if it's as short as all that? I mean, do you think there's a sort of optimum length that things ought to be?
Yes, and I am definitely on the shorter end of that. I think, but again, I'm sticking to my guns here, because I'm back to the audience. And I'm back to the audience who wants one topic clearly, concisely, simply laid out
Mm.
with clarity and simplicity to get that through into my head. Whereas if chapter 5 of the big Repossible book, if it were chapter 5 were create, which I think is a huge element, and it's now I've been demoted to chapter 5, that's it. And how can I tell people you should really focus on chapter 5? It's super important. Okay, thanks. Right? Whereas what's also kind of fun is I get to see, what books are doing well, what books sell better, what books get more comments, where do I get the reviews? Where are the reviews like raving, and where are the reviews kind of so-so? So even from the author perspective, I get more out of this. But my goal is really, so okay, here's an example. I have a course, I have lots of courses. I have an online course, it's called Finish. And it's sort of a joke. And it's even bundled in with another course, and I put it in one of my recent books because I said, are you not finishing books? Are you buying courses that you think this is the greatest course of all time, and you spent good money on it, and you get to, I don't know, lesson number 4, and you never open the thing again? So I have I have a course called Finish. You can go to finish.repossible.com, and it's a course. It's 3 lessons. You can finish it in 10 minutes, and you even get a certificate. And the point of this, it's pretty jokey, but the point of this is to complete something. And this I'm big on. I mean, back to the spark and getting a book done in a month. We've got to get it done. It's not, no, we're going to do it in 7 months. Can you extend like 3 years? No, we can't. Get the book done. And if you want to work more, you ready for more? Great, let's work on book 2. But not this never ending, it's never going to be done thing. And people who don't have, they have analysis paralysis and perfection, they can't finish something. And my Finish course is my joke course to get your completion, get your certificate, build up your confidence as well, and get that thing done. Now go move on to the course that's longer than 10 minutes.
But finishing it is yet another opportunity to fail, because now, first you're spending all your time preparing, then you're spending all your time doing it, but then if nobody buys it, then it's another opportunity to fail.
Right. Yes.
These psychological shifts that you have to make to get anything accomplished. Well, you were talking a little while ago about how you have a different avatar for each book. How do you? There's some of it I think you've mentioned is under this Repossible umbrella, but how do you prevent yourself from confusing your audiences? If you are effectively writing a different book for a different avatar, there still needs to be enough of a common theme. We set aside the genre of kids. That's one. There's no risk that you're really going to be confusing the audience there, because it's unlikely that an 8-year-old is going to read Create, for example. They're just,
right.
Or they might get, when they get a bit older, they might. But sometimes what you'll see, I've seen it, is you'll get journalists who will write a half a dozen books, and they're all on different things. And you're thinking to yourself, is this guy an expert in anything?
Right.
The one guy I'm thinking of in particular, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't mention his name, is a guy named William Poundstone, who's a journalist. And he wrote a book about, I think he wrote a book about questions that you might get asked at an Apple interview or something. But then he wrote about a book that had nothing to do with intelligence or linear thinking or thinking outside the box, none of that. And you see enough of these different books, you begin to think, well, what's this guy really good at? So how do you prevent something like that from happening? The more books you crank out, if every single one of them has got a different avatar, it seems to me that the chances are of confusing one group with the people. And that's why authors use pen names. So you get Agatha Christie wrote, it was Barbara somebody, I don't remember, but she had a pen name for somebody else, and then she was able to write in a different style without people who read her crime mysteries getting confused. And believe it or not, J.K. Rowling, who's famous for the Harry Potter books, also has used a pen name for something else. And I don't read this stuff, so I read Agatha Christie sometimes, but I don't read J.K. Rowling. So I don't know what it is. It's just that I'm very interested in how people think about how they do what they do. So that's how I know about it. But how do you prevent your stuff from confusing your audience?
Well, it's interesting you said about the J.K. Rowling. She has a different reason, because she didn't want to pull her Harry Potter fans who think she only writes about Harry Potter.
Hmm.
and I'm going to go read this other book, and then they're going to compare and contrast with all the Harry Potter books.
Okay.
So, I mean, she has luxury issues, of course.
Yes.
She doesn't want her billions of
Yeah.
fans to follow her along. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Should we ever run into that problem, we can call her up and say, hey, what advice do you have to give me?
exactly. So back down to reality and Earth, where we live.
Hmm.
I have, yes, it is definitely something I had considered a few years ago when so I've written in 3 or 4 genres now, and I have the same name. I have not done a pen name, but within the past year, I've really gone all in with my nonfiction, my personal development, my Repossible. So for now, all of the Repossible books, all 11 of them, it's same avatar, so it's the same audience. So that's not been trouble. But I hear you what you're saying, and if you do write in different genres, then yes, if they're not at all related, like if I were to come out with a romance book that has nothing to do with anything else I've written, then I really should do a pen name.
Hmm.
But for now, for better and or worse, I have done it all under my name. Although the kids book now it's acceptable because I have this Spark program to write a book with the kids. So now it's even beneficial in that people say, oh look, he actually wrote some of these books with his kids,
Hmm.
and just not just making up stories. So that's worked out. But if it is a different audience and it's like, wait a minute, is this Bradley Charbonneau? This isn't his book. Then yeah, then I would do a pen name.
Okay.
So yeah.
The Spark program is for kids and their parents. How can adult entrepreneurs get started in writing books? For one thing, are you going to make this kind of thing available to adults? Would you,
Yeah, well, it's funny, but from Spark and from some of those parents I told you about who were saying, "Hey, Bradley, with the kids and all, that's all great and all, but I want to do this on my own." And so so Spark, I had broken down into 2 parts. I had really like the parent-kid interaction, or how to get the stories out of your kids, stuff like that. And that was one element. But then as I was building the course and the workshop, I realized, wait a minute, these people, they're going to need to know a few of the technical, boring stuff about how to format your book, how to get your book onto the bookstore, stuff like that. So I ended up splitting it up, and I have Spark, and then I have just what I call Publish. It's technically a separate course,
mhm.
and that is the A to Z, everything you need to know about from writing a book, from the idea all the way to getting it into the bookstores. So I did break it up, and I do have that. And I partly with in mind of the parents, but also because I also get requests like, "Hey, Bradley, I don't have any kids. I don't even want any kids,
Yeah.
but but hey, I'd really like to do that book thing. How do you write that book in a month? I want to do that."
Mhm.
And so I do have a course called Publish, where it's the A to Z of how to everything you need to know from book idea to on the shelf.
How many hours would you estimate it would take the average first time writer to? It's a loaded question, but the average first time writer to complete that published course.
You mean like the book is done, or
I
the
mean, oh,
not
okay.
writing necessarily?
Someone who, we're talking about entrepreneurs and how to get them motivated, and we hope they're all excited now and we can hardly wait to start on their book. So they get your
Yeah.
course. They want to write a book, and they want to go through your course so that they can go, from A to Z
Oh, okay.
and do it. How many hours should they expect or plan for to be able to do that from the time that they start to think about writing this thing to the time they actually get it published?
Okay. Okay. So from the absolute simplest, easiest case scenario, and again, I like that you're targeting entrepreneurs, because I'll share the link with you. I have a great half-hour presentation I did for entrepreneurs here in the Netherlands, and the benefits of writing a book and how it could then expand your avenues, get into public speaking or other services or consulting based on your expertise that you have just laid out in this book.
Mhm.
So quick answer to your question. I mean, it could be anywhere from 20 hours to 20 years, right?
That's
As
really
we all know.
encouraging. I mean, you know.
So if you want to do the fast track, so the 20 hours, that, because I think, especially for the first book, and again, I'm so obsessed with finishing. And so I really think the first book is pick an easy topic, pick a simple topic you really know about, slam dunk of the knowledge. You don't need to go research and get a PhD in a topic. You
Mhm.
already have the knowledge. And then if you bring in the audience again, if you think about audience, think about who is your ideal target audience who absolutely adores you and hangs on your every word. In other words, you have the confidence to bang this thing out. So I would recommend really starting with a short book in less than 100 pages, right? And if you think, where does the content come from? The easiest answer is go look in your email inbox and then at your replies, and you got your questions from your clients or your customers or your students, and they're asking, hey, Bradley, do you know how I format a book for Amazon? And when I type out my answer, there's either a chapter or the beginnings of a chapter. And go collect 10
Mhm.
of those and expand on it a bit, organize it kinda,
Mhm.
and you have a 10 chapter book. And if that book is 60 to 100 pages, great. I have a joke with my students. I say, I care more about your second book. I want your first book to be done. I want you to have it behind you and all that you've learned. And now we're going to bring it into your second book, because your first book, you probably have, pent up frustrations for 2 decades. And you got to get that out of your system and then focus on your second book. So I'm not going to jump right into second books right here, right now, but
Right.
that's kind of what I'm thinking behind the scenes. I want to talk to these students when they're ready for their second book. When they come back and say, Bradley, that first book, man, that was tough, but I did it. And you know what? I have this idea for a second book. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
That's when it gets exciting. So
What do you
get
do?
it done, keep it short.
What do people do whose lists are either small or inactive or don't respond to respond to you? So if you have if you have a large enough list and they're responsive, you're going to get your ideas from them. But people who are just starting out don't have those things. How can they get the information that they need?
So I mentioned 10 emails in your inbox. If you, and I'm not kidding about the number 10, if you have a 10 chapter book with 10 ideas that are under an umbrella of one topic,
Mhm.
then if you don't have 10 emails from clients, or you're just getting started, go ask potential clients, potential customers,
Mhm.
what are your challenges? What are you struggling with? How can I help you? What do
Okay.
I know that you don't know? And and of course, this is a topic that ideally you either know something about, or at least you're passionate about, and you're going to learn about. Because if they ask you something you don't know, well, you know what? Hey, you know what? I don't know that answer. I'm going to go look it up for you, and I'll get back to you. And
Okay.
then you look it up, and guess what? There's your research for chapter 4, and the research you just did. And you go tell that person, hey, I figured it out for you. It's blah blah blah. So, and there's a chapter. But it's really, it's just, so all right, I'll stop at some point, but I do have a book called Ask, and it's another of the, what I consider a brutal one, because for me, asking was always hard. I always thought, oh, I don't need anybody's help. Oh, I can do it on my own. Oh, I'm a little nervous to ask that person a question. Like I just had the example of go ask the potential client for, what are their challenges. That used to be scary for me. I would be shy, or scared they're going to think I'm stupid, or I don't know what. But if you can get over that asking fear, people love to talk with you. They love answering questions. They love giving their opinions. Go ask them something, and especially if you say you're passionate about it. I am passionate about toothbrushes. What kind of toothbrush do you use and why? And you're going to think, your first thought is, wow, the guy's passionate about toothbrushes. That's interesting. But then you're going to say, you know, I use a Philips Sonic Care and I love it. And here's why. And there you go. There's chapter 5. We've already got 5 chapters.
Okay.
And we're just making this stuff up as we go along.
Yeah. In the description of the Spark program, you talk about some free software that people can use to, I guess, to write the book or to format it or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Can you tell us
Both.
a little bit about what that is and where we can get it?
Yeah. So there is a company. Let's put a link below, because if they use my special link, they get a $25 credit.
Okay.
And the software I'm talking about is free, but I'll
Mhm.
tell you where the credit comes in handy later. So the product I'm talking about, it's a book editor. It's online software where you can put up your book and you can do chapters and sections and the dedication and the epigraph and the afterword, and the table of contents is all automated. It is a full-fledged book editing and formatting tool, and it's all completely free. And you can put it up there, and then the beauty of it, as compared to like Google Docs or Microsoft Word, the beauty of this software is that when you're done, you're ready to publish to Amazon or Kobo or Barnes and Noble, you go down to the bottom and you say export, and it says, here it's where it even gets better. Do you want an ebook or a print book? And it'll make both of, it'll do them separately, but you can make your ebook, you can make your print book.
Wow.
Export, you go download, you now have the file that is accepted at, Kindle, Barnes and Noble, Kobo, everywhere. And so, and you can do the paperback book. It'll format your paperback book, download, now you have the file, now go upload to Amazon and everybody else, and you can upload your paperback book. You're done. And not to mention that the software is beautiful. I have a pet peeve of ugly software, and it is just a joy to use this software.
Mhm.
So I will, but then that is only one tool of this service. And another thing, this is where the money comes, and that's all free. And where money comes into play is this service. They also have a pool of book editors, of book cover designers, of even book
Mm.
marketing people, of proofreaders, of all kinds of stuff. And what's fantastic about it is that it's not just an open market. It's not a free for all. But I met the co-founder in London at a conference, and he said they take about 3% of the applications. So they might get 100 applications for book editor. They only take 3. So for us as writers to know that they are already a select group of experienced editors, and I mean, there's even ghost writers in there. There's everything in there. So it's a marketplace for other professionals to help you get your book done, get it written, get it edited, get it proofed, get it published, get it marketed, get it everything, and it's all in there. So that's where it costs money, and that's where you can. That's where the $25 gift card or whatever it is, credit, is handy, because then of course all those services are paid. So the company is called Reedsy, Reedsy, and we can share that link
Okay.
in there. I'll get you a special link. I think
That's
it's reedsy.repossible.com.
okay. That's a really important thing that maybe people aren't aware of. If you're writing a nonfiction book,
Yeah.
creating the index is a nightmare. You pay somebody to do that. Um,
It's all
Getting
done.
somebody to edit it so that it will conform to the
Yeah.
house standard is something you want somebody to do who knows that stuff inside and out. Because you can spend your
Yeah.
whole life trying to get it to fit what the publisher wants, and
Yeah.
then to format it for Kindle is another nightmare.
It's a
Um,
total nightmare.
I've looked into it, and I suppose that might be the one thing that has held me back a bit more, maybe, than some of the other things, is knowing
Yeah.
that even though I crank this, even though I have a pretty good idea of what I want to say, I can't just say it. I have to deal with the formatting and all the other shenanigans
Right.
as I go along,
Right.
and I don't want to have to do that. So to
Right.
be able to do what you want to in any format that you want to, and then push a button,
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. Reedsy is a fantastic company. It's really, they just keep on offering stuff. And not to mention, I mean, it could really be a one-stop shop. And another reason I really like it is because if some of my Spark students, if they say, hey, Bradley, could you help me with my book cover? Hey, Bradley, could you edit my book?
Mhm.
I say, no,
No.
but but hey, here's Reedsy. Look, here's the editor section, and you go, you can type in nonfiction editor search, and you can go check out all their resumes and experience, and get a quote and all that. It's extremely professional site.
And the cover is another thing. How many of us are drawn to something because of the cover?
Yeah, yeah,
Some covers are really cleverly done, but
yeah,
others are simple. And it takes just as much skill to create something that has a lovely picture on it as it
yeah,
does to create something simple. But that cover has to communicate with the potential reader in a way that it grabs their attention and makes them
yeah,
want to pick up yours or to click the link or whatever
yeah,
and learn more about it. So there's a real art to that. And you're
yeah.
probably, you might get lucky, but you're probably not going to find somebody who can do that on Fiverr. You know,
Right, right, exactly. Well, that's exactly the point. You might, and you might get lucky. There you go. You just gave them a new tagline, which they're not going to like.
well,
But
but the
yeah,
thing is that how many opportunities do you have to, as they say, to make a first impression? Somebody
right,
sees your title and the cover isn't very attractive.
yeah,
We all do this. We see a
yeah,
title and we think, oh, that looks really interesting, and then we look at the cover and think, oh, it's probably not something I'd want to read. So that
right,
cover has
right.
got to it has to communicate not only the message in your book, but also the message that you want people to understand about you.
Yes, yeah. It's funny you mention this. I was talking with a designer yesterday. I'm looking to revamp the entire Repossible series
Hmm.
because it's become bigger than me, so to speak. Because
Yeah.
um, I really want it to do exactly what you said. Not only what is in the book, but who am I, and what is this message I'm trying to get across? And is the cover doing it? And currently, frankly, it's not. So
Yeah.
I'm going to revamp all those.
Yeah. So you've said that your next book is Create. Tell us
Yep.
more about it. What's it going to be about?
Create. It's if every single day is the frequency, create is the what. It's the what should you do on a daily basis. And this is under the umbrella of Repossible. And the tagline for Repossible is, who will you be next? And this is where I believe that our personalities, our almost to the point of our DNA, is changeable. We can change. Seth Godin had a great line. He said, people like this do things like that.
Mhm.
Meaning, snowboarders like to do dangerous sports and snowboard or whatever. And you
Mhm.
say, oh, but I'm not a snowboarder, so I can't do that. Okay, would you like to become a snowboarder? Would you? And for me, it's again, with my simple story, it's I wasn't a writer and then I became a writer. I was not a type of person who was going to write a lot of books. Now I am the type of person who writes a lot of books. So create is for me the key action. And it's really about creating. It's really about making or doing, because I believe, and this is the point of the book, through creating, and again with on a daily basis, you can create your present to then create your future.
Mhm.
So it's again, very much along the lines of every single day. I'm trying to keep the consistent theme, but a lot of people will ask me, Bradley, I love the every single day idea, but what am I supposed to do every single day? And for me as a writer, the answer is writing, simple.
Mhm.
But if they say, oh, I'm not such a writer, what can I do? And I go back to the broader idea of creating. And I think and people often think of creating, they associate it with creativity. And I'm not doing that here. I'm not saying you need to be this flowery, beautiful artist. It's more about making or doing, or something that was not there is now there. So it's creating something. It's the exhaust pipe from you. I often call it the exhaust pipe of your soul. what is trying to get out, what is blocked inside of you, and how can you let it out? And usually it's through making or doing, or in my case, writing it out. And that's why with writing out things, uh, that's where you're really going to do the learning. And through writing it out, you're going to learn and then progress and grow from that creating. So the opposite of creating is, in my opinion, is consuming. So I'd make a joke about how we watch a lot of Netflix, we watch TV, we listen to podcasts, we take courses, we read books. It's all incoming, coming into us. But then at some point, we're going to explode. We're going to, what is the outlet? What is the exhaust vent? And for me, that's create. It's not just throwing it up, back out, but it's, okay, take it, channel it down into your hand, write it out. What's it going to be? And it's a little bit, you could talk about, daily journaling. I'm not a big journaler. I don't really consider what I do journaling, but that's an idea to think about. A potential outlet for creating could be a daily journal. And that can take all kinds of different ways to do that. But I'm following along the lines of every single day. That's how often to do it. But then what to do is to create, is to make, it's to do, it's to record, it's to, you can record a video, you can record an audio, it's got to be something where your voice is voiced. It's, you let it out. I think that's where we really learn. We don't need to take any more courses. We don't need to read any more books. We don't need to listen to any more podcasts or watch any more movies. We have enough already. We need to trickle that out and let it come out. And that's where we're really going to learn.
I wanted to ask you how much you write in a day, but that's not really what I want to know. It seems to me that there's two kinds of writing that you do. And maybe there's more than that, but I see two distinct types of writing that you do. You do the daily piece, and then you do the piece where you're writing the book. How many words do you write in the part where you're doing the daily piece?
I have no limits. It could be, I really admire Seth Godin, who he also writes daily. And if you subscribe to his newsletter, it's sometimes a couple paragraphs. And I think that is absolutely acceptable. For me, it's not so much the quantity as it is one idea.
Okay.
So for me, it's the idea of an idea. It's the idea of a complete thought. And if it takes 3 paragraphs to get that complete thought out and in there in a nice package, great, you're done. If it takes 3 pages, if it takes three tomes, okay. But to get that idea out, and what can happen then is, if I got my one idea for the day, I get it out and I'm done. Boop, I'm done. Great. Maybe I think, whoa, that is a big idea there. I'm going to hit publish on this 3 paragraph thing, but wow, that is a 3 chapter, if not 3 book idea right there.
That's what I was thinking, is that you because of the overlap of ideas in something that you do, that to pick one and just write a few paragraphs, that the more you do it, the more you're going to see, the deeper you're going to go into it. And then it stops being the daily activity and moves over to the other side as one more massive project I need to be working on, because things have developed. I was just wondering how you keep the two separate like that, but it sounds like you do the daily thing, and the daily thing becomes a kind of engine for the bigger stuff that you do. And at some point you make the switch.
Yeah. The daily is the factory output. It's that little package that's coming off the assembly line. Okay. I've got my little package every day. And then at the regrouping stage, in the other part of the factory, there's going to be, okay, how are we organizing this? How do the pieces fit? It's like a puzzle. And how does it fit together? And I'm literally like in Reedsy, or I'm dragging and dropping chapters and sections and realize, okay, here, oh wow, actually these 3 chapters, that should be its own section. let's make a new section and put these 3 chapters in. Great. And how does that flow? All right, I've got now 5 sections. Do they flow correctly? Great.
When do you expect Create to be available to the general public?
On May 17th.
This year.
Yeah.
Wow. So by the time you're watching this interview, it will be out. It will be on.
Okay, great.
And so you'll be able to get it. And so then you have a number of websites, I think, but how can people find you?
I have way too many websites.
How would you like people to find you?
So there's I really put it down to 2. There's bradleycharbonneau.com, which is, if we have my name anywhere, we can spell it.
Yeah.
And that's my sort of resume, so to speak. That's about me and what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's repossible.com.
Okay.
And repossible.com is really, for me, I see it more like a company, and I'm just an employee. Yes, it's my name. Yes, we thought it up. Yes, it's my brand and all that. But I see it as a sort of a conglomerated cooperation of more people than Bradley. It's not the Bradley show. I'm just one of the apartments in the apartment building. So that's where I see it being much bigger and greater and grander than me. That's really what I'm excited about, is the Repossible world and growing that.
Okay.
But those are the 2 spots.
Okay. Well, that's great. I've pretty much reached the end of the things that I wanted to ask you about, at least for now. Is there anything that you want to add? Anything that we haven't covered that you think people should know?
Because we've talked about this so much, I'm just going to reiterate how important I think it is to start a project and finish it. So I'm going to plug my cheesy, jokey little course called Finish at finish.repossible.com, and go in there. And there's a couple of videos, and actually, I actually make you watch them. You have to do the quiz at the end, and you have to answer questions. So it's not just like go turn it on and go to sleep. I actually make you work a tiny bit, but it's an introduction to my philosophies of that hardest step is that first one. That first day, November 1st, 2012, it was a murderous day. But do I regret it? No way, because that's what started me down the path. And I also do quite a bit of public speaking, and in the Create book, also and I'm actually working on it right now, how I'm linking up a book, a Kindle, with video. And so I'm trying to make that as easy as possible to get to sort of bonus content, bonus video content from the book. But in Finish, you'll get a quick idea of what I'm all about, and my style, my teaching style. And go check it out. You even get a certificate of completion, which I think is hilarious. Yeah. But I'm very jokey. I'm very light. And I have to say, I was not this way before I started writing. I mean, I've always been a fun-loving guy, but I was depressed pre-2012. And
you were trying to be somebody you weren't.
Yeah. And I was doing a great job at not being the somebody.
Yeah. And
now it's a whole lot easier to be yourself and be the person you really want to be. And
Oscar Wilde says, be yourself, everyone else is taken.
Yeah, it's very true. So why bother trying to be everybody else?
Yeah.
And I'm all about cooperation and not competition. And yeah, come check out Finish and have a joke and get your certificate and check out our world. And I'd love to connect with you.
Great stuff. Thank you so much for spending all this time with us. It's been really informative for me, and I'm sure that other people will benefit from it as well. Thanks again.
Great. My pleasure. My pleasure. It's been great talking with you.
Great.